Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we come together to learn more about accessibility for all. My name is Hussam Mohsine. I'm the program manager for Microsoft Reactor in Abu Dhabi. Microsoft Reactors are hubs for founders and developers to meet, learn, and connect to local peers, as well as industry leading ideas and technology from Microsoft, partners, and the open source community. It's also home to the Microsoft for Startups program with a diverse mix of hands-on workshops, expert panels, and community events. There's something for everyone. Check out our calendar of events on meetup.com and join our coming sessions. Our speaker today is Rory Preddy. Rory's focus for the last few years has been on research and development with a focus on cloud research, consulting, and training. His work with research allowed him unparalleled insights into industry movements, trends, and news. Rory heads up the Middle East and Africa accessibility pillar for Microsoft, speaking and inspiring on how to empower everyone in every organization to achieve more. Feel free to ask questions during the session. We will have regular stops to answer these questions. And also feel free to interact with us on socials. The hashtag is Reactor Abu Dhabi and our Twitter handle is MSFT Reactor. Make sure you also adjust the playback settings to select the highest quality for the best experience. With all that said, I hand over the mic to our speaker to start the session.
Thanks, Hussam. Wow, it's great to be here, and we've got a lot to cover. So I'm just going to share my screen now. And we can go live, add content from here. And you should be able to see my screen here. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover, and you might be a little bit interested in that. So let me just put my PowerPoint here. We're going to cover accessibility for all. And this will make a lot more sense, Ikigai, once we finish the actual presentation. Because Ikigai is purpose. And what I'm going to show you is how you can use accessibility to drive creativity and purpose. So the topic is accessibility for all, and it's very important that we highlight all, because it's not only accessibility for a single tier, and we'll show you how to do that. My name is Rory Preddy. I'm in developer relations for Microsoft, and you can follow me at Rory Preddy. I do a lot of Azure updates, technology updates, and I do a little bit of programmer humor, which keeps my audience interested. So let's start from the beginning. Who am I? So I have an accessibility, I wouldn't say issue, because there aren't any issues, but I was born with achondroplasia, which is a form of dwarfism. So I've always been short. I'm 4'1", which is 120 centimeters. And I adjust my life and I bolt on my life. You can see there, these are my car pedals in my midlife crisis 335i, and you can see there I bolted them on. They've only failed once. Yeah, don't ask about that. And this is really how I go about my life. Not only do I bolt on my life there, but I also kind of make a this is me at the University of Bloemfontein lecturing. I make a plan. This is me getting it's not Ethiopian decaf. Decaf is terrible. This is espresso there at one of my previous employers. And yeah, I make a plan. It's we have also made a plan, but recently I felt very left out. Kind of like this Joker and that Joker, and there's no Jared Leto Joker, because the industry has decided that he was not the good Joker. And I felt left out because there was a huge drive to have this creative input around development, and there wasn't a lot of drive around accessibility. So I made it my passion to be able to go in and speak on development, because the world is changing. You can see here, this is the adaptive controller that we actually created, Microsoft created in 2000, and I think it was 15 or 16. And this allows people with limited mobility to be able to play games. And it was a huge innovation, and the world started to change. And the feeling of left out, how I felt left out, started to change also because we had all of these opportunities. And this was created with the accessibility with all mindsets. So let's go back and also look at how this changed and how we can incorporate this into our development software life cycles. To do that, also I have to go really back in time to 2004 to the Agile Manifesto. And this was a change where software developers approached businesses and organizations and they said, we know how to build software. You don't have to tell us. We created a manifesto for Agile software that says we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. And key to this is individuals and interactions of processes and tools. Why can't we develop for the individual? And key to the Agile process is developing for the individual and understanding their process via user stories. And we'll look at a little bit later, a very easy way to start that with the Agile process with user stories. We also noticed with after the Agile Manifesto that there was a push for aligned autonomy. So you have all of the different parts of software development, organizations, roles, team cadence, architecture, and plan and practices. Then we had a kind of a sub organization into alignment and autonomy. So those two there should actually be aligned. And it was really the pinnacle book by Daniel H. Drive, who said, you need to give your teams three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I've previously done a session on DevOps on how you can actually do this. And we're going to look at a little bit of how to actually give people autonomy, the ability to work alone and to not have to have any external requirements. Mastery, be able to be the master of your craft, and then purpose. And remember where before there we had that Ikigai presentation here, and purpose was key to that. Ikigai is purpose. Because once you have the overlapping of what you're good at, what you were paid for, what the world needs, and what you love, you have passion, mission, vocation, and profession. So now that we know what we would like, what do we have? So before Agile, before the Agile Manifesto and the Agile Revolution, we had 4 to 6 month milestones, horizontal teams, personal offices, long planning cycles, PM, dev, and test were sitting in separate buildings, yearly customer engagement, feature branches, 20-person teams, secret roadmaps, mountains of bug debt, 100-page spec documents, deep organizational hierarchy, success is a measure of install numbers, no concept of work in progress, and feature ship once a year. And then after Agile, 3 to 4 week sprints, vertical teams, team rooms, continue planning and learning, PM and engineering in the same office, continue customer engagement, everyone in master, 8 to 12-person teams, publicly shared roadmap, minimal debt, specs and PowerPoints, flattened organization hierarchy, user satisfaction, determined success, limits measured, and feature ship every sprint. But we also suffered from something, and I kept on kind of like ringing in my head. Agile was supposed to be for all. So how could I actually install that? Because a lot of things came about Agile that weren't actually necessary. So we had open offices. The bane of my existence. You can see here, they kind of missed the plot. This is an open office with a fish tank. Can you imagine how hard it is to maintain that? And, you know, open offices have now been proven to be an anti-pattern, and people are realizing that work from home, we can do everything from the home. We also learned how to, with Agile, how to clean a whiteboard. And this whiteboard here costs a lot of money. I've seen whiteboards cost more than Ferrari cars. And it kind of missed the point. The whiteboards need to be driven as part of the Agile process, but they are not the Agile process. We also learned how to stick Post-it notes. I went on 2 courses just to learn how to actually use whiteboards and Post-it notes. Now, a little bit of a trick. If you've got the Post-it notes, hold it in your one hand, take your finger and gently scrape off the glue, because they actually have minor, small microcapsules of glue that you don't want to actually disturb. But what are we doing? We've learned how to have open offices and whiteboards and that, but we still haven't created Agile for all. Because what we lack is the concept of how to handle the Hydra. What is the Hydra, you ask? The Hydra is a mythical creature, Greek mythology, that actually, when you chop off the head, so that head there, if it was to chopped off, another head would just grow back. And it's a good metaphor, because this guy here, he's the developer, and these are bugs and features and all of these other kind of issues that he's trying to run at the same time. You can see he's running there and handle. And also key to this, all of these bugs and features are also relevant for people with accessibility features. So we're going to call him the accessibility Hydra. If I have an issue with accessibility in my Agile framework, and I chop it off and I say I can't cater for these individuals anymore, isn't that defeating the purpose of Agile? We're supposed to be focusing on the individuals. And then we can look at Ikigai again. So now let's look at Ikigai. We know what you're good at. We can look at Agile and programming, and we're fine. What you love, we love programming, we love development. What you get paid for, but what the world needs. What the world needs is for us to actually handle the accessibility Hydra, to be able to move fast and move for all and cater and program for all. But to do that, we need to learn how to be empathetic. So this is a show I like watching, Rick and Morty. And you can see there that Rick historically doesn't really care much for Morty. And whereas Morty's climbing up the mountain, Rick is kind of just eating a sandwich and going up his hover chair. Because we constantly have these distractions. Every time that we want to actually say, wait a second, I'll make this project accessible, we have all of these side projects that we have to look at. Have you ever tried to actually deploy a project and say, wait, I'm going to now introduce something in production? It's very difficult because you can't do that. For every time that you want to implement something in production and it wasn't thought out in the design phase, it's been proven to be 20, 30, 40 times more difficult. Because at the end of the day, that you can also do Ikigai wrong. So this is a sticky guy. And this basically says everyone who wants to do accessibility, put your hands up. But honestly, the only people who are going to put your hands up are preachers, bank robbers, in roller coasters, cops, and DJs, because they lack the ability to be empathetic. So how do you learn empathy? How do you learn empathy to introduce it to your Agile Ikigai world? First, you have to acknowledge you live in an empathy bubble. Right now, if you're watching this remotely on your laptop or on your PC, you already are, you lack the empathy of someone who doesn't have that ability, who can't actually visually see what I'm presenting. And we can fail on our accessibility because of that. You can see here, he has a wheelchair ramp. You can see that that person there really wasn't aware of the empathy required to agilely create that ramp. So the plan, I'm going to give you a plan on how to create empathetic agile processes. First, you need to understand your organization's unique accessibility motivator. For each organization, they're motivated for accessibility in different factors. If you're working in a programming shop, you might be motivated by the delivery of software. If you're working in retail or service industry, it differs. Second, set achievable milestones. Being able to say we'll make everything accessible immediately is not realistic. You need to set interim milestones, and I'll show you how. Implement tools, and luckily this is very tool heavy, this presentation, so I'll show you exactly the tools you need to do. Measure, improve, and automate. Honestly, if you're not measuring how you're developing, give me a shout. I'll show you how to do it with a lot of development tools. But if you don't measure, how do you improve? And how do you automate? Remember that book by Daniel H. Pitt, Autonomy, Mastery, and Purpose. Let's also give her an introduction to accessibility. You can see here, this is another anti-pattern. This person has a ramp there, and this is really not accessibility. So we're going to go down. We're going to show you as part of the plan a little bit of background on accessibility. So what is accessibility? Accessibility is the designs of products and services and environments so that everyone, including people with disabilities, can fully experience them. It's not the designing for disabilities. And that's an important concept. And I'm going to show you via a simple process how inclusive product and service designing for your products to be included for everyone can actually lead to innovation. Wait, Rory, that's very confusing. What are you saying? That if I program for accessibility, I can actually improve my business? Yes, I actually am saying that. Because once you take that hat off and say that we're going to bolt on your products, you realize that you may have been looking at this from the whole lot. With the Ikigai, what the world needs, it's much more focused on being able to design for everyone. Key to this also is the definition of disability. Disability is not a personal health condition. You don't go to a doctor and you say, I'm not feeling too good. He goes, I think you've got disability. He doesn't. You only realize you have a disability when you have a mismatched human interaction. And, you know, my son, who's also short like me, I actually said to him, you know, you're short. When do you feel different? He goes, I only feel different when I can't reach something or someone doesn't actually cater for me. And that's exactly what I feel when I have to bolt on a requirement in my life. You only feel disabled when you have a mismatched human interaction. And we can define those human interactions with simple compliance levels to see how compliant your system is to not be mismatched. And I'll introduce the WCAG, the Web Accessibility Guidelines, and they break it up into 4 main characteristics and 3 levels. So let's look at the levels first. Level A deals with most basic web accessibility features. So are you doing the right color? Or do you have you know, the right size font? Level AA signifies the biggest and most common barriers for disabled users. Do you have captions for your videos? And level AAA addresses the highest and most complex levels of web accessibility. And this is really starting to design for products that are more centered for people who have issues with certain products, specific issues. Like, for example, being able to drive an autonomous car. So a lot of companies aren't really on level AA, but guess what? Level AA is going to be required from legislation from this year. We'll go through that now. WCAG also has some principles. Perceivable, can you see it? Operable, can you use it? Understandable, can you understand it? And then robust, it won't break future technologies. And these are pretty simple to use if I give you examples. So let's look at some examples. So perceivable, can you see it? Visually impaired people, can they actually see what you're doing on a website? Operable. So remember that Xbox adaptive controller that I mentioned earlier? Can you operate your products without having full mobility? Understandable, can you understand it? So included in the WCAG principles and the levels is ADHD and autism. You might think that something's easy for you to understand, but when you put it into someone who has a lot of anxiety on your product, it becomes much more difficult. And robust, it won't break future technologies. Designing for accessibility also means that if something changes dramatically, it still is accessible. I also find that a demo is the easiest way to show all of these accessibility issues and to also give you a quick start on that. So you can go to accessibilityinsights.io, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the core tooling that Microsoft has open source. So if you want to know, mandated in Microsoft is that every public-facing site and video and product has to be accessible, and we open source our tools with Accessibility Insights to be able to give you the opportunity to do that. So I'm going to go discard here, and I'm going to show you a quick little demo. The only time I'm going to go out of the PowerPoint, and I've got a little site here. This is the W3 org accessibility before and after homepage. And you can see here, I've got a little site there saying, welcome to City Lights, the little tourist site here. And I've got the accessible version and then the inaccessible version. And the accessible version here has some pictures and lists there. And these are all accessible. And I know that this is accessible because if I go and inspect here, you'll see there that one of the key characteristics is that you have an alt tag, but that's empty, but it's still empty, has an alt tag. We also see that the HTML here, if I go and inspect that, is actually proper formatted HTML. You've got the list items there. They're not doing any tricky business here. So what about the inaccessible page? What should we see different? Surely this is going to break if I click through here. Guess what? To you and I, because we live in an empathy bubble, nothing will change. The same pictures, the same web, the same issues that were for us easy to actually navigate, we can't actually. But for someone who's visually impaired, mobility impaired, it's very difficult. So here's a tool that you can use, and Microsoft, it's open source, to be able to do that. And this is Accessibility Insights for Web. You can get it in the Chrome Store or the on Microsoft Edge. And it comes in 3 different flavors for tooling. So one, let's go back to this thing. One is you can actually do, not settings, you can do FastPass. You can do a full assessment that allows you to actually check for level AA or CAG 2.1. And then you've got some ad hoc tools there also that allow you to switch your colors and do tab stops. So let's do FastPass on the accessible site and the inaccessible. So FastPass and accessible. So let's go here and let's go. We shouldn't really see anything here. Let's go FastPass. We don't see anything there. Great. Your page is accessible. What about the inaccessible page? We switch on FastPass there. And we see immediately there's 44 failed instances. And it highlights it here, so you can actually take a screenshot of your inaccessible items. Not only can you do that, it gives you recommendations of what to do, and you can also publish these. So if you go there, highlight visible, you can file the issue. I've got the issue here directly to GitHub. You can go directly to GitHub or Azure boards. It'll take a screenshot of this, the exact issue around that, and it automates all of the testing. So let's also look at the assessment. And the assessment goes through a lot more details, but some of it is manual, but you can't do everything in WCAG automated, and you can get there, and then you can actually print out the report and export the results. And then finally, after that, let's look at the ad hoc tooling. We're going to switch on tab stops. Now, on the accessible page, just make sure that I have tab stops. The accessible page, if I go to tab locks, remember the mobility, and I go to tab spaces there, you can see it goes perfectly through that, so I can navigate with that. What about the inaccessible one? You can take a screenshot of that. Let's just refresh that. And the inaccessible one here, so let's switch on tab stops, and immediately we are stuck. So, and this is a nice non-automated version to be able to give to your testers. Right now, you should go take it to your site and test your site. And it's a great way to get a quick overview of that. But what did I say about Daniel H. Pick's book, Autonomy, Mastery, and Purpose? We need that automated because part of the agile process is to look at how we can drive DevOps. Just look at also some motivators, and we'll go through how to actually use that tooling that I showed you to become automated. So remember I said to you accessibility is a motivator, and you should be motivated by Ikigai, the purpose for what is great to the community. There's also legislation. So legislation is being driven now, and you can kind of see it being implemented on a lot of sites. And legislation is driven primarily by the US 21st Century Digital Experience Act and EU Parliament on Directive of Accessibility that says by 2021, every forward-facing site has to be a section, not AAA, WCAG 2.1, or you'll get up to $100,000 fine per day. The Canadian government says that they're implementing this, and then if you do not have a public-facing site that is a civil site, they're going to fine you $100,000 per day. We also have with Ikigai with purpose, quality of life. Best said by Bill Gates, for most of human history, we put our innovative capacity into improving the quality of life because we're living longer. Our focus is starting to shift towards them, improving the quality of life. So that was quantity of life and quality of life. So stick and carrot. We see the motivators now are, we might do what GDPR did, GDPR, that says everyone now has to have a pop-up to say, do you accept cookies? Wouldn't it be nice if we did accessibility with the tooling that I showed you there in an agile process without having to be forced to do that? Wouldn't it be nice if we could adopt empathy from the beginning? And also, we must remember that empathy is a journey. It's not pity, it's not sympathy, but it's compassion, aware of others' difficulties. And you can do that through driving empathy labs. A lot of you have never heard of that, but there are companies that can actually do this. One of them is DQ, one of our partners, and DQ actually sets up, and Microsoft also, empathy labs that allow you to actually simulate exactly what your customers see with your products. So what you do is that you have tables there with your developers on certain, you can see their motor disabilities, and you define your characteristics, your personas, to allow them to adopt and become that persona. So this is Ron, he's 82 years old, retired. He doesn't use any assistive technologies, multiple conditions. And Ron, even though he's not visually impaired, he wasn't born with blindness, might have failing eyesight. Once you have those personas, then you actually set up your little workstation here with your different personas, and you implement it there, and you see exactly what are your motivators per your organization, what works and what doesn't. And you do this also with inclusive design. So what is inclusive design? First of all, is to recognize exclusion with those empathy labs. 2, solve for one, extend to many. When you solve, and we'll give you an example now, for one persona, you can extend it to many. For example, Ron, he's visually impaired, but he's not blind. So if we solve it for someone who's got blindness, we might solve it for Ron also. And finally, learn from the diversity. Create your empathy and also your empathy journey. Let's look at our persona spectrum. So we have here a person who is an amputee or limited mobility with an arm. We have one arm, an arm injury, and a new parent. And a lot of you who know that being a parent is financially draining, especially with this lockdown that we've experienced, is physically draining. So it's kind of like, you know, that you have an impairment. But we look at that now. If you were to go to your manager and say, I need to bolt on that requirement for someone with one arm, guess what? You can't, because that's only 26,000 people. This is the US stats for disabilities. And 26,000, he's not going to say yes, go right ahead, go bolt it on. But when you're showing the statistics that the permanent amputee has 26,000, the temporary disability for injury is 13 million, and then the situational disability is 8 million. Guess what? 21 million people have that. And that's a motivating factor to be able to program for that persona spectrum. And also, accessibility. There are 1 billion people right now who have accessibility requirements in the world. If you take their friends, families, and people who are heavily invested in them, it's more than 3 billion people that would love to actually use your product and give you more than the $1 trillion worth of accessibility products and services waiting there that they need. So once we have a persona spectrum, we've got a ticketing scenario. Let's superimpose that and see how this can create innovation. So we have our registration process and our navigation process and our checkout. And once you actually look at that, you've got the site landing, preference, registration, help, login. You can search for flights. This is a ticketing scenario for flights, add to cart, help, and then you've got your checkout, ticketing, and then you have a survey for that. We superimpose that with our persona spectrum. Suddenly everything changes. Wait a second, when we land, we want responsive design. We want to capture and ability to change font and color options, an accessibility help desk, single sign-on for mobility issues, callback help, one button access, voice search, SMS and email, one button access also on checkout, And then important ethical AI adjustment. And we've recently actually published as part of the Build 2020, be able to create ethical AI that allows you to actually see, am I catering for the population that's actually using my products and services? Always have AI adjustment, never actually just become stagnated with your persona spectrums. So what am I giving you also now for the transformation practices? How do you do this? One, create a team to manage your empathy transformation. Create your personas. Execute an empathy program to drive motivation. Make high quality learning resources available and integrate into these onboarding. Form a team of accessibility coaches to coach agile teams. And create an accessibility dashboard to measure progress. And how do you set the progress? Let's look at milestones. So normally we have the agile process. So you have the wireframe, product backlog, sprint backlog, and then you have your sprints, then your scrums and rinse and repeat. And then right at the end, we have the bolt-on for your accessibility. But we've seen a huge drive to shift left. Now, I can't jump right now because I am virtual, but normally when I do this talk, I actually jump left and I say shift left. Because what we want to do, instead of having a large investment in accessibility right at the end, we want to do a small investment through the backlog design, coding, and testing. So you bring in, introduce accessibility with mechanisms into all of these processes in the entire agile milestone process. Do this with tools. I'm going to show you the tools necessary. So one is that, remember I showed you how to bolt on accessibility with accessibility insights, and you can do that right at the end. But we also want the ability to be agile, and agile is moving fast. And we don't want to find the lack of unit tests disturbing. So how we do this, and we can scan now our unit tests. We can unit test for accessibility. You can do this with scanning with a library and a partner that we have called Xcore. Xcore is a JavaScript library. It's an NPM package. It scans a rendered DOM, an HTML page or an app. It reports back as JSON. The same engine as Accessibility Insights. So we partnered with Accessibility Insights, the company called DQ, and we used that same engine that I showed you with that front-end bolt-on tool, and we scan it and we get our results. So you have your developer, your Azure pipeline, DevOps pipeline. You use your Yarn test or .NET test. You get your results there, and then you can integrate that into your testing frameworks, your Selenium or your other testing tools, and then you get a result there of exactly how accessible your product is in an agile DevOps framework. And this is what it looks like. This is our Azure DevOps. I've got the demo running there if you want to ask any questions. And you can see there I've got a .NET test that has failed. And you can start now on github.com/Microsoft/X pipeline samples. And what it does, it actually gives you, let's just go out here and I've got the sample running here. It actually gives you, so this is the X pipeline samples, and you can click through on the failing C# WebDriver. So this, let's see what we can find out. The failed run there, an error of the process. And you can see the .NET test. You can view the raw logs, which I've done previously, and the raw logs tell you immediately, wait a second, ensure that the contrast between foreground and background meets with tag 2.9 color ratio threshold. It's just testing a really simple page with the wrong color ratio. And this is running, this runs every day. We have this as a demo. With Chrome, with Firefox, and this is the Accessibility Insights engine, the Xcore engine, running in a DevOps pipeline, allowing you to be agile. So what about my business? What about the requirements gathering? So that's the dashboard you can create. There's also the X matches. So you can go to DQ Labs, X matches. This allows you to create your stories. Remember I said to you about your stories and your user stories. So you can actually go test the whole page. Known to be accessible should fail. Given that I'm a visitor, when I visit, then the page should be accessible. And you can write them in Cucumber-like syntax, Gherkin, and give that to an Excel spreadsheet to your business users and let them write the actual accessibility use cases, because they should be responsible just as you, as part of the Agile team, because Agile really is that. it brings everything to fruition is Ikigai. It's the fruition and the incorporation of the entire product team. You can also, if you want to use upfront assistant, you can use something called pattern libraries. So you can see there's a primary button and that's guaranteed to be accessible. So you can use pattern libraries.dqlabs.com. And if you want to immediately create an accessible web-based or app application. So in summary, team practices. Invite users with disabilities into the research. It's very important to have those empathy labs and to be able to understand their struggle. Communicate your design intent. Use all the tools that I've shown you there. Communicate with the GitHub issue, publishing it with Accessibility Insights directly into GitHub. Show them exactly what the problem is. Leverage a pattern library. Leverage an automated testing library, which we saw how to do that with X pipelines. And then automate your accessibility testing with Azure DevOps or a DevOps tooling. And finally, measure your progress. Make sure that you're aware of the percentage that your test run of your accessibility on your web page or your apps, and you can measure your progress. And this isn't a blame game. Remember that empathy bubble? Start somewhere. Start at 0%. Even if you have 0%, adding that 1% with those tunings that I showed you there is a life changer for some of your customers who have accessibility requirements. And then obviously accessibility in retrospectives. So I've got a little video to show you exactly what you've been doing and what you not wanted to be doing. So this is someone who is using a bolt-on technology to actually go and row down. Whereas all we need to be able to do this effectively is look at how Ikigai and how we can create a synergy between all the different parts of the development lifecycle. In conclusion, we've discussed empathy, how to create, set up empathy labs, and also the persona spectrums. We've discussed shift left on your quality of your accessibility testing as part of your DevOps pipeline. And then we've looked at how to automate it using libraries, tools, and frameworks. For more information, everything that I've said to you is on microsoft.com/accessibility, along with the persona spectrums and the tools that I've mentioned in this session. And then finally, also, we're running a hackathon, the remote resilience in this time of remote development with the COVID crisis. Microsoft has paired up with Be My App, and we're creating a really fun and engaging hackathon where you can actually go in and be mentored and also get really assistance on becoming remotely efficient using Microsoft tools and technologies. So that's me. Let's answer some questions. Hi, Hussam. Do you want to send the questions?
Hi. All right. So for the questions, we have one on whether companies, how do they conduct accessibility tests and use focus groups to improve their products? Do you think companies are investing in that direction? How can we actually encourage more of that?
Wow, that's a lot of questions. I think that it comes down to the stick and carrot. So creating your empathy teams is very important from the beginning of your design process. But what's going to come down the line is that those two legislations by the EU and the American federal government that is basically going to push accessibility down like GDPR is. If you look at the internet right now, it's not even recognizable from 2 years ago when GDPR wasn't a thing. And GDPR was kind of pushed down very, very fast and very heavy, and people really kind of like, got a shock. So if you want to tell people what to actually expect, it's that accessibility is going to be a mandated requirement by these governments, or they're not going to have business. They should create those empathy labs, that empathy process, and the retrospectives and the Scrum process right now as part of their design process. Next
we
question.
have another question on the automated tools. Can these work in the Windows version of the accessibility tools or just the web ones?
That's a very good question. Now, the accessibility tooling is provided. If you go to accessibilityinsights.io, there is a tool for web, for Windows apps, and also for Android apps. Now, all of these are just scripts that you run right now as part of your backend process, though. So if you have an app there, as long as the platform is supported for and can actually execute that app, but then yes, you can actually run these in the background in the platform. It may not be as succinct as the one in the web. Remember, the web actually uses a headless Chrome browser. Starting up, Android Studio might be a little bit memory intensive, but have a look at it. Give me a shout. I'm keen to help. Next question.
We got asked also for the session slides and video. The video will be made available very soon on YouTube, so you can go back to check it and review everything we covered. For the slide, Rory, if you can push them to GitHub, I'll make them available for our audience.
Definitely, I will.
Right, and one more question. I'm not sure if I got that right, but I'll read it out. Are there any teams or groups that specialize in accessibility for teams and companies?
So one of them is the DQ company. So they are a group, a company that we partner with, and we do hackathons, accessibility hackathons, and we can actually run them for your customers, Microsoft, as part of our tiering and our promise to empower every individual and organization to achieve more. So have a look at DQ, D-E-Q-Q-U-E. They run Empathy Labs. But if you look at the diversity channels for your local Slack group, there's always an accessibility flair, there's accessibility communities out there. I would strongly reach out to your meetup.com accessibility groups and see if you can actually help and assist and engage with them. It's a very flourishing community right now, and I'm proud to be part of it.
Sounds great. I think that's it with the questions. There is one more coming. What's the link for the hackathon? All right, I'll put that link for the audience as well, and I'll share a couple of links as well as we speak. Would love you guys to sign up for our newsletter on the Reactor website. I'll paste a couple of links here for you to learn more about what we're doing and also take things forward. So first of all, the first link I'm going to share is for the Reactor website, as I said. So here you can subscribe to get notified about our coming webinars, technical sessions, all the interesting stuff that we're doing. And there are also interesting webinars that are hosted on the Cloud Society page. So would love you guys to check out that page as well. And of course, there is another interesting newsletter sent out by Microsoft. It's called Microsoft Source, and you can join it on the third link I'm sharing. I'm also gonna send out the link to the hackathon. And I would encourage you also to check out our meetup for more interesting events that are coming, and we will have future sessions as well with Rory, and we've been discussing a few interesting topics that are coming. So stay tuned, we've got lots coming.
Great, thank you, Hazem. Thanks everyone, and reach out to me, follow me on Twitter at Rory Preddy, and I look forward to hearing about your accessibility journey. Thanks, everyone.